All right, so the video I have for today is about this is an op-ed that I saw in the Columbus Dispatch from a couple days ago. And the topic that I have, or maybe the question that I have for you, is in the year 2022, where we're seeing people who are banned from social media and banned from the public discord for spreading false information and spreading hate speech, and for spreading a message or for using words and language that are going to cause harm to other people or put other people in danger. I don't understand why stuff like this is allowed to be shared in the public discord. Basically, everything that this woman says in this op-ed is a lie, or it's an absolute twisting of the truth. And the only reason that they're sharing this kind of information is because they're trying to get people enraged. They're trying to create hate and division in our society. And I don't understand why in 2022 that is acceptable. Why is it acceptable to spread hate and lies about police officers who are just out there trying to do their job and go home at the end of the day to see their families? Why is it okay to do that? But if you call Caitlyn Jenner the wrong gender, you're going to be kicked off of social media. Why is it okay to say some of the things that she's going to say? We're going to go over here in a minute. Well, why is it okay to say that police officers are trained to target black people? Why is it okay to say that that is part of our training? But it's not okay for a medical professional to share information about a virus that he believes to be true based on research that he's done. Why is that okay? So the story that I have for today, the headline, as you can read yourself, says, "Pastor, police believe black people are the enemy due to a warrior mindset." The person who authored this is right here. This is her picture. Miss Susan K. Smith. She identifies herself as an activist, a musician, a pastor, and a writer living in Columbus, Ohio, founder of the Crazy Faith Ministries. I don't know what kind of pastor she is, because I don't believe that she could be Christian. If she was, she wouldn't be telling the lies that she's telling in this op-ed. So she starts off by saying, there's an adage that says, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always gotten. That seems to be the situation when it comes to the way many police officers treat people of color, whether the suspect is male or female, or if he or she is black or Hispanic or any identity other than white. The likelihood of excessive police violence is likely. Not very gooder at writing. Columbus police officers verbally abused, punched, and kicked Timothy Davis when they arrested him more than 4 years ago. Last month, a jury denied all claims of Davis's civil rights were violated by the 8 officers and the city of Columbus. Black people, especially, are seen as particular threats with police, saying they had to use excessive force because they were in fear for their lives. They are trained to regard black and brown people as the enemy. And in training, a so-called warrior mindset is cultivated. So she is literally saying that police are trained to regard black and brown people as the enemy. And in training, a so-called warrior mindset is cultivated. If this woman is so smart and she knows so much about what she's talking about, it should be very easy to produce training materials that show police officers are taught to believe that black people are the enemy. Go ahead and produce that for me. If you can't produce that, then you're nothing but a liar. And if you're a liar and you're going to go on a public forum like this, I don't know what kind of pastor you are. I've been through a lot of training, and none of it has told me anything about to treat black people as the enemy. And then when she talks about this warrior mindset, that's one of those things that is one of the most misidentified, or it's described in such a misleading way. It's unfortunate that it's being used to create hate and division in our society. When people talk about the warrior mindset, what they're talking about is you as a police officer. It's very difficult to take people who are civilians and teach them how to be the police. One of the most awkward things that a new police officer does is literally walk up to someone for the first time, grab their wrist, and put handcuffs on them. One of the hardest things is that when a brand new police officer goes to put cuffs on somebody and that person doesn't want to be put in cuffs. We teach our brand new police officers that there are going to be times that you're by yourself and you have to go put someone in cuffs, and that person doesn't want to go in cuffs. There is a lot of examples, and there's a lot of videos that I could show you if I wanted to, of officers doing that very thing. And then when that person doesn't want to go to jail, the officer ultimately loses their life because of the fight that occurred due to that resistor. So officers are taught that when you're by yourself and you're going up against a suspect that doesn't want to go to jail, you're not allowed to lose that fight. That's where the warrior mentality comes from. I can tell you that, well, it's in one of my videos. I talked about how I arrested a guy in my own backyard when I returned home from work. This guy was significantly larger than me. We had a foot chase. I caught up to him, and he kept trying to turn on me. I had to do everything that I could to prevent him from doing that. If this guy had been able to turn around and get his hands on me, my life might have ended that day. That's not something that's uncommon to happen in the job that I do. So when I get into a fight, I have to go into that fight with, losing is not an option. Because if I lose that fight, my life literally depends on it. If the suspect loses that fight, he's going to go to jail. So those are my thoughts about the warrior mindset. Then she continues on. The so-called fear for my life argument has no weight when a suspect is running away, or in the case of Timothy Davis and Columbus police officers who beat him, a suspect has been wrestled to the floor. Well, Miss Susan K. Smith, since you're so freaking smart, why don't you explain to me why it was right around Christmas time, 2021, officers responded to the scene of a traffic crash. The suspect, or one of the people driving the vehicle, fled from those officers. They gave pursuit, and he turned around and started shooting at them as they were chasing him. So the so-called fear for my life argument has no weight when the suspect is running away. I also have a friend who was chasing a suspect. That suspect didn't even look back, just reached behind him with a gun, popped off a round, hit my buddy in the leg, where he actually lost inches of his femur bone. He wasn't sure if he was ever going to walk again, let alone live. He was in a position where he was in so much pain that suspect could have very easily snuck up on him and ended his life. That was a suspect who had his back to him and was running away. Then she's going to talk about Mr. Timothy Davis, who, here's a picture of him. I'll get to his arrest here in a moment. But she says, or as with the case of Timothy Davis and other Columbus police officers who beat him, as a suspect is wrestled to the floor. So what she's saying is that you can no longer fear for your life after a suspect's been wrestled to the floor. Well, right here is my waistband. Right here is where most people keep guns. These are guns that can very easily kill a police officer. So if I come up and try to grab somebody by the hands and they pull their hands in, and then we end up wrestling down to the floor and they're not releasing their arms, their hands are still here in their waistband. Yes, I have every right to fear for my life, because there's a very good possibility that he is concealing a firearm and he intends to kill me with that firearm. There's so many videos of these things that I could pull up right now. There's one at the St. Anne's Hospital. This is from 2021, where a suspect was in the hospital, had a warrant, and had a firearm in his pants. When the officers went to put him in handcuffs, he reached into his pants. The officers were unable to get his hands, and he fired that weapon through his pants and almost struck an officer. So please tell me again how this so-called fear for your life argument has no weight. You know what has no weight is your opinion. So then she goes on to describe the warrior mindset as being racist and everything. Let's talk here about, what was his name again? Timothy Davis. Here's a story from when he was actually sentenced out of his incident. This was an arrest that was captured by a bystander on cell phone video. If you were to read this article, it would take you a minute to figure out what exactly happened, because they buried the lead all the way at the bottom. So I'm going to start there. Why was Timothy Davis being arrested? He had a warrant for assault on a police officer. Davis's assault on an officer occurred a year before the arrest in Driving Park. In the September 2016 incident, Davis managed to escape from officers after struggling, and he struck an officer in the face with a handcuff that had been placed on his wrist. The officer required stitches above his right eye. Davis has a long history of resisting and fleeing officers. So in 2016, this guy, Timothy Davis, was being placed under arrest. I'm assuming the officers had his hands cuffed behind his back, and the first thing you do is you slap a cuff on one of your wrists. He was able to, with that cuff on his wrist, break free and begin fighting the officers. He had a cuff on his wrist and the other one in his hand, and he was striking officers using that handcuff as a weapon. That's why he was being arrested today for his warrant on assault on a police officer. So what happened was a group of officers in plain clothes had been following him. They watched him go into a convenience store, and they decided that it was a confined space, and that was probably a safe place for them to go and place him under arrest. They walk up to him, surrounded him, and said, "Timothy, you have warrants for your arrest. Put your hands behind your back. You're going to jail." That's when he said, "No, I'm not going to jail. Screw you guys." And a fight ensued. During that fight, they took him down to the ground. He put his hands under him, refused to give them his hands, and they had to use force in order to encourage him to pull his hands out from under his body. So here's the story. A Southside man filed a federal lawsuit accusing Columbus police of violating his civil rights, was sentenced to 30 months in prison for assaulting a police officer. So the story should be a man who was placed under arrest for assaulting a police officer. They should then describe the manner of which he assaulted that police officer, and then they can go ahead and say, and by the way, while he was being arrested for that, the officers used force, and he thought that was excessive force, so he's filing a lawsuit. Timothy Davis was convicted by a Franklin County jury 2 weeks ago of assaulting an officer and obstructing official business, an attempted arrest in 2016. The sentence was imposed by Judge Fry. And then here's the stuff where they talk about his arrest being caught on video. One of the things that people like to point out about this arrest, because here he is, he got tuned up pretty good by the officers who were trying to effect the arrest. One thing that happened was when they were reviewing all the body camera footage after the fact, there was an officer who was not directly involved with the arrest who said something dumb on his body camera. And this is something that the media really honed in on, and it's something I would like to talk about. So the incident attracted attention when it was revealed that one of the officers involved with the arrest made comments captured on his body camera about he would have used abusive force against Davis. I'm going to directly talk about that here in a moment. Officer Joseph Bogard said he would have told Davis. So this is an officer who's saying, I would have told him this. I'm going to, for real, armbar you. And then if that still doesn't work, I'm going to choke the life out of you. And then when you're drooling on yourself, I'll place you in handcuffs. So the author of this Columbus Dispatch article is saying that it was an officer talking about how he would have used abusive force against Davis. This is where I'm going to tell you a story again, which this story has already been told. It's on this channel, about the guy arrested in my backyard. This guy was much larger than me. He was younger than me, and he was probably 6 inches taller than me. And he probably outweighed me by at least 40 or 50 pounds. Basically, when we were wrestling, I had him in some form of a headlock. His head was here, the rest of his body was out there, and I was using that to control him. He was reaching up and grabbing my arm, trying to pull it off of him, and then I was using my chest and my body to push down on him. Occasionally, he would say, "I can't breathe, can you let up?" Every time that I let up, he would put his hands on the ground and try to push up like he was going to get up. And every time he would do that, I would tighten back up and say, "You need to get back down. We're not going to do this." And, this probably went 3 or 4 times. And then finally I squeezed in on his neck and I got down by his ear and I said, what did I say? I said, "If you keep doing this, I'm going to choke you to death, or I'm going to freaking kill you." And I squeezed in on his neck, and I wanted him to understand that I wasn't going to put up with him trying to get up and trying to fight me any further. Now, was I threatening to use abusive force on him? No. What I was trying to do was protect myself, and I was also trying to make sure that fight did not go anywhere else. When he was arrested, he never complained that I used any kind of excessive force on him. As a matter of fact, he didn't have any injuries on his person. Sometimes you say things, and those words it's actually a low level use of force, but you're making someone believe that you're capable of much, much more. And it's kind of like when you've got kids, sometimes just getting the paddle out and showing them, "Hey, I got this." That's good enough to get kids to go ahead and change their behavior. So she talks about the warrior mindset for a second. And then the other thing that's down here that kind of ticked me off is she shows Dylan Roof again. She says, "When Dylan Roof shot and killed 9 people in a church in South Carolina, police were able to apprehend and arrest him in spite of the knowledge that he had committed a mass murder. Instead of shooting him, they brought him to a Burger King before taking him to jail." When someone uses this argument, I'm going to get his face off my screen. When someone uses this argument, this is how you know definitively that you're talking to someone that doesn't have a brain and is incapable of thinking for themselves. And the only thing they know how to do is regurgitate the ignorant nonsense that they've heard thousands of times over the years. There's multiple faults with what she's saying here. The first one is that she thinks that police went and apprehended him and then threw him in the car with no handcuffs, drove him to a Burger King and said, "Hey, what would you like and how would you like it? We're going to go back to the station and we're going to hang out for a little bit." What happened in real life, which is a place where people like her do not live. I'm going to put her face back up because if I'm talking about her, you all should be able to see what that face looks like. What the officers did was they placed him under arrest because he got out of his car with his hands up and complied with everything that they did. Believe me, if he would have given them the opportunity, they would have executed him on the side of the road. Unfortunately, fortunately, I guess I should say, they're professional police officers. They acted according to their training and according to what they're expected to do within the Constitution of the United States. The man gave up and they placed him under arrest. They took him back to the station, and the local PD began to do an interview and interrogation. Multiple hours down the road, the FBI said, "Hey, you know what? We're going to go ahead and take over this investigation. We want to go in and talk to the guy." The guy had already been in custody for hours upon hours. When the FBI interrogator went in to talk to him, he was unable to concentrate and kept complaining over and over again that he needed something to eat. Now, this interrogator wanted to get as much information out of Dylan as he could, because as long as somebody is talking, you want to keep them talking. So what they did was they sent someone to go get some food. Once Dylan had some food, he continued to talk, and he gave up all the information that they needed. If people like Susan here really are concerned about a mass murderer like Dylan Roof being convicted and sent to the prison for the rest of his life, she should be grateful that the interrogators were willing to go that extra mile to make sure that they kept their suspect talking. But the problem is she's not smart enough to understand how that works, and she's feeding on the stupidity and ignorance of other people and trying to get them angry and use their hate to keep our country divided. The other thing that they're trying to say is that if you're black and you get arrested, this is what your face is going to look like. If you're white and you're arrested, this is what you're going to look like. She said Dylan Roof had shot and killed 9 people in the church, and the police were able to apprehend and arrest him in spite of the knowledge he had just committed a mass murder. Instead of shooting him, they brought him to Burger King. Well, let's look at some other people. Who's this? Oh, this is a black man who shot at police. After a couple-month investigation, they were able to serve a warrant, go up in his apartment, and place him under arrest. They didn't shoot and kill this guy, even though they knew he had shot at police officers trying to kill them. Tampa police arrest man accused of stealing a car and going on a 2-hour manhunt. This guy here, Andre Parker, he led police on a 2-hour chase, and during that chase, he was firing a gun out of the back of his vehicle, trying to shoot the police officers. They didn't shoot and kill him, even though they knew that he had just shot at police officers. Here's the convicted killer of a Lakewood police officer. This guy had a warrant, said that he was not going to go to jail. So when he was approached by a police officer and said, hey, you got a warrant, he shot that police officer in the face 5 times. Here he is, apprehended without being killed by police after shooting a police officer and murdering them. Here is Corey Ali Muhammad. He was wanted for slaying a security guard and setting out to kill as many white people as he could, gunning down 3 men on the streets of downtown Fresno before he should be captured, and then he admitted to the shootings. Corey Ali Muhammad shouted Allah Akbar as police tackled him to the ground after the shootings. So this guy right here, Corey Ali Muhammad, opened fire in downtown Fresno with the stated goal of killing as many white people as possible. The police responded to this by tackling him to the ground. This guy right here, Timmy Kinner, he stabbed and killed a 3-year-old girl at her own birthday party. And then he stabbed and wounded 8 more people. He was also arrested and not killed by police. This idea that all black people that get arrested look like this and all white people that get arrested like this is nonsense. The only reason that you would make statements like that are, well, I said it in a video before. These people are either willfully stating lies or they're stupid. I tend to believe that they're lying on purpose. They know the things that they're saying are not true, but they say them anyway. The sad thing is, people like her who make these kind of statements are encouraging people to act violently. They know that these people are scared and angry, and they're feeding into that. The natural reaction of people who are in that mindset is to act out violently. You may remember in 2016, there was a guy in Dallas, Texas, that shot and killed at least 5 police officers, wounding I can't remember how many more. He specifically set out to kill police officers because he believed that they were racist. People like her are encouraging people like him by saying that police believe black people are the enemy due to a warrior mindset. In 2021, there were more police killed in ambushes than any year in history. Here's a story from January 2022 that the FBI issues a stark ambush warning to cops nationwide. I don't understand why in the year 2022, when people are being banned from the public Discord for hate speech, encouraging violence, and spreading misinformation, I don't understand why it's okay to use hateful language and spread misinformation about police officers. If we're going to have rules regarding how we talk about things, those rules need to be applied equally across the board. I'm not in favor of banning people from the public Discord. I think that if someone is stupid, you should allow them to be stupid as publicly as they want to be. I also don't think it's okay to ban some people for their hateful speech while allowing other people to go forward with it. I don't really have an answer for this, but I will tell you that this kind of thing needs to stop. Those are going to be my thoughts for today. Thank you for watching. I'll talk to you soon.